Before you hear this story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up, because what my rich cousin did when she found out I outsmarted her will leave you speechless. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this ends. And please, share this with anyone who's ever dealt with family drama. They'll thank you for it. My name is Charlotte, and I need to tell you about the most satisfying revenge I've ever gotten. And I didn't even plan it. It all started when my cousin Victoria and I were both pregnant at the same time. Now, Victoria has always been the golden child of our family. She married a successful investment banker, lives in a mansion in the suburbs of London, drives a Range Rover, and never misses an opportunity to remind everyone how well she's doing. I, on the other hand, work as a primary school teacher, live in a modest 2-bedroom flat with my husband James, and we've always lived paycheck to paycheck. Victoria has made it her life's mission to compete with me over everything. And I mean everything. When I got engaged, she planned a more expensive wedding. When I bought my first car, she bought a newer model. When I got promoted at work, she made sure to mention her husband's latest bonus at the next family gathering. But this story begins on a rainy Tuesday afternoon in March, when I was about 6 months pregnant with my first child. I was sitting in my living room, reading a pregnancy book, when my phone buzzed. It was Victoria. "Charlotte, darling, how are you feeling?" she asked, her voice dripping with that fake sweetness she always used when she wanted something. "I'm fine, Victoria. Just tired. You know how it is," I replied, already sensing this conversation was going somewhere I wouldn't like. "Oh, I absolutely do. Richard and I have been so busy preparing the nursery. We've hired an interior designer, and you should see the imported Italian furniture we've chosen. It's simply divine," she gushed. "But I'm calling because I wanted to ask you something. Have you and James decided on a name for the baby yet?" Here's where I should mention that Victoria and I had both found out we were having boys around the same time. And knowing my cousin as I do, I immediately became suspicious. Victoria had always been the type to copy everything I did, but somehow make it bigger, better, more expensive. "We have a few options," I said carefully. "Why do you ask?" "Well, Richard and I are having the most difficult time choosing. We want something sophisticated, something that will suit him when he's running his own company someday. I was hoping you might share your ideas. You always have such interesting choices." The way she said interesting made my skin crawl. It was the same tone she used when she talked about my quaint little flat or my adorable vintage car. I had been lying in bed the night before, and James and I had finally decided on the perfect name, Alexander. We both loved how strong and classic it sounded, and it had been my grandfather's name, Alexander James Mitchell. It had a beautiful ring to it. But something in Victoria's voice set off every alarm bell in my head. I had a feeling that whatever name I told her, she would somehow use it for her own benefit. And then, in a moment of pure instinct, I had what I now call my stroke of genius. "Actually," I said, trying to sound casual, "we've pretty much settled on Mortimer." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Mortimer?" "Yes, Mortimer Bartholomew Mitchell. It's a family name on James's side." I lied smoothly. His great-great-grandfather was named Mortimer, and he was quite successful in his day. We think it has a distinguished sound to it. I could practically hear Victoria's wheels turning. "Mortimer Bartholomew, how unique." "We love it," I continued, really getting into character now. "It's not common at all these days, which makes it even more special. We want our son to have a name that stands out, you know? Something memorable." "Yes, I can see that," Victoria said, and I could hear the wheels turning in her head. "Well, I should let you go. Take care of yourself, darling." After I hung up, James looked at me with confusion. "Mortimer? What was that about?" I explained my suspicion to him, and he laughed. "You really think she'd steal our baby's name? James, this is Victoria we're talking about. She once bought the exact same dress I wore to our cousin's wedding, just in a more expensive designer version. Trust me on this one." 3 weeks later, I got a call from my Aunt Margaret, Victoria's mother. "Charlotte, dear, I have wonderful news. Victoria had her baby last night." "That's fantastic," I said, genuinely excited despite everything. "How are they both doing?" "They're perfect. He's a beautiful boy, 8 pounds, 2 ounces, and they've named him Mortimer Bartholomew Ashworth Clark." I nearly dropped the phone. She had actually done it. My rich, sophisticated cousin had named her son Mortimer Bartholomew because she thought it was distinguished and unique. I had to bite my lip to keep from bursting into laughter. That's a very distinctive name," I managed to say. "Yes," Victoria said it was a special family name. "Very distinguished," she said. "I must admit, it's not what I would have chosen, but Victoria and Richard seem very pleased with it." Over the next few weeks, Victoria sent constant updates about little Mortimer, photos of him in his designer baby clothes, stories about the expensive nursery, updates about how he was clearly advanced for his age at 3 weeks old. Every message ended with love, Victoria, Richard, and little Mortimer. I started to feel a bit guilty about what I had done. Maybe I had been too paranoid. Maybe Victoria really had just wanted name suggestions and happened to like the one I made up. But then I remembered every time she had copied me, every time she had made me feel small with her comments about my choices, every time she had turned a simple conversation into a competition. 2 months later, I went into labor. After 12 hours, James and I welcomed our beautiful son into the world. As I held him for the first time, looking into his perfect little face, I knew we had made the right choice. "Hello, Alexander," I whispered. Alexander James Mitchell. The name suited him perfectly. Strong, classic, timeless. Everything I had hoped for. We spent a few days in the hospital, just bonding with our new baby and getting used to being parents. I was so wrapped up in the joy of having Alexander that I completely forgot about the whole Victoria situation, until she came to visit. I was sitting in my hospital bed feeding Alexander when Victoria swept into the room carrying an enormous bouquet of flowers and a gift bag from Harrods. "Charlotte! Oh my goodness, he's beautiful!" she exclaimed, setting down her gifts and approaching the bed. "Look at those little fingers, and that hair. He looks just like you did as a baby." "Thank you, Victoria. He's perfect," I said, unable to keep the smile off my face. "So," she said, settling into the chair beside my bed, "what did you decide to name him? I've been dying to know." And here's the moment I had been both anticipating and dreading. I looked down at my beautiful son, then back up at Victoria. "We named him Alexander. Alexander James Mitchell." Victoria's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, realization, and then something approaching horror. "Alexander?" she repeated slowly. "But I thought you said you were going to name him Mortimer?" "Oh, that," I said, trying to sound casual while my heart was racing. "We changed our minds. We decided we didn't really like Mortimer that much after all. Alexander just felt right when we met him." Victoria's face was getting redder by the second. You changed your minds?" "Yes, it happens sometimes. You know how it is when you're pregnant. You think you want one thing, but then you realize it's not quite right." I paused, looking down at Alexander. "Alexander was actually our first choice all along. We just weren't sure about it at the time." "Your first choice," Victoria repeated, her voice getting higher. We've always loved the name Alexander. It was my grandfather's name, you know. Very meaningful to us." Victoria stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "You mean to tell me that you gave me a name you didn't even like? That you were never going to use?" I looked up at her, trying to appear innocent. "I'm sorry, Victoria. I didn't realize you were going to use it. I thought you were just asking for ideas." "Just asking for ideas?" Victoria's voice was getting louder now, and I could see other visitors in the hallway turning to look. "Charlotte, I named my son Mortimer Bartholomew because you told me it was a distinguished family name." "Well, technically, I said it was a family name on James's side, which isn't entirely untrue. He does have a distant relative named Mortimer, and I'm sure it is distinguished. It's just not really our style, I guess." Victoria was practically vibrating with anger now. "Do you have any idea how many people have asked me about that name? How many times I've had to explain why we chose Mortimer? My mother-in-law keeps asking if we're sure about it. The ladies at my book club keep making faces when I mention it. I'm sorry you're having a difficult time with it," I said, though I wasn't sorry at all. "But Victoria, you have to understand. We never promised you that name. We just mentioned it as something we were considering." "Considering? You told me you had pretty much settled on it." "Did I? I don't remember saying that exactly. Pregnancy brain, you know." I bounced Alexander gently in my arms. "Besides, I'm sure Mortimer is a lovely name. It's unique, just like you wanted." Victoria stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her trying to decide whether to continue the argument or cut her losses. Finally, she grabbed her purse and headed for the door. "This isn't over, Charlotte," she said through gritted teeth. "Victoria, wait!" I called after her. "You forgot your flowers!" But she was already gone, leaving behind the expensive bouquet and the Harrods gift bag. James walked in just as Victoria was storming out. "Was that Victoria?" She looked upset. "She's just realized that she named her son Mortimer based on information from someone with pregnancy brain," I said, grinning up at him. "Oh no," James said, trying to look concerned but failing to hide his smile. Poor Victoria indeed," I agreed, looking down at Alexander's peaceful face. I guess she'll have to live with her distinguished choice. The aftermath of Victoria's hospital visit was exactly what I had expected. Within hours, I started receiving text messages from various family members. My mother called to ask if I had really tricked Victoria into naming her baby Mortimer. And my sister sent me crying, laughing emojis. Even my usually diplomatic Aunt Margaret called to say that while she didn't approve of family drama, she couldn't help but admire my cleverness. Victoria, meanwhile, was in full damage control mode. She sent out a long email to the entire family explaining that Mortimer was a carefully chosen name with deep historical significance, and that she was proud of their unique choice. She even included a list of famous historical figures named Mortimer, as if that would somehow make it better. But I knew Victoria, and I knew she was mortified. This was a woman who had spent thousands of pounds on a nursery designed by a professional, who had hired a photographer for newborn photos, who had been planning to announce her son's birth with custom-made cards featuring his name in gold lettering, and now she was stuck with Mortimer Bartholomew Ashworth Clark. The best part came 3 weeks later, when Victoria called me. Her voice was different, smaller, less confident than usual. "Charlotte," she said, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "Of course, Victoria. What is it? Did you deliberately give me a name you didn't like?" I paused, considering my answer. I could have lied. Could have maintained the pretense that it was all a misunderstanding. But looking at Alexander sleeping peacefully in his crib, I decided Victoria deserved the truth. "Yes," I said simply. "I did." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Why?" she finally asked, and for the first time in years, she sounded genuinely hurt rather than angry. "Because, Victoria, you've spent our entire lives trying to outdo me. Every choice I make, every milestone I reach, you have to make it bigger and better and more expensive. I knew that if I told you the name we really wanted, you'd find a way to use it first, or make it about competition somehow." "I don't do that," Victoria protested, but her voice lacked conviction. "Victoria, when I got engaged, you announced your engagement 2 weeks later with a ring that cost 3 times as much as mine. When I bought my first car, you bought a newer model the same week. When I got promoted at work, you made sure to mention Richard's bonus at the next family dinner. You've been competing with me since we were children." Another long silence. I didn't realize I was doing that," she said quietly. "Maybe you didn't realize it, but you were. And when you called asking about baby names, I couldn't let you do it again. This was too important to me." Victoria was quiet for so long that I thought she might have hung up. Finally, she spoke again. "Charlotte, I owe you an apology. Not just for the name thing, but for everything. I think I have been competitive with you, and I think it's because I've always been a little jealous." "Jealous? Of me?" I was genuinely surprised. "Victoria, you have everything. The house, the car, the husband with the successful career. But you have something I don't have," she interrupted. "You have people who love you for who you are, not for what you have. When I see you with James, or with your friends, or even with our family, I can see that they genuinely care about you. Not your accomplishments or your possessions, just you." I felt a pang of unexpected sympathy for my cousin. "Victoria, no, let me finish. I've been so focused on having the best of everything that I forgot to just be happy with what I have. And now I have a son named Mortimer, and every time someone asks me about his name, I'm reminded of how petty I've been. You could always call him by his middle name," I suggested gently. "Bartholomew is, well, it's different, but it's not as unusual as Mortimer." Victoria laughed, and it was the first genuine laugh I had heard from her in years. "Bartholomew? Charlotte, that's even worse. What was I thinking?" "You were thinking that you wanted to one-up me," I said, but I said it with a smile in my voice. "I was, wasn't I? God, I'm such an idiot." "You're not an idiot, Victoria. You're just competitive. Maybe too competitive. So what do I do now?" "I can't exactly change his name. The birth certificate is already filed." "Actually," I said, "you can change it. It's not easy and it involves some paperwork, but it's possible to change a baby's name within the first year." "Really?" "Really. And if you decide to do that, I have a suggestion." "What's that?" "Choose a name that you and Richard actually love. Not because it's distinguished or unique or because it will impress people. Just because you love it." Victoria was quiet for a moment. "We did have another name we really liked. Thomas. Thomas Richard Ashworth Clark. It was Richard's grandfather's name and we both loved it, but I thought it was too common." "There's nothing wrong with common names, Victoria. Some of the most beautiful names are common because they're timeless. Thomas, she repeated, and I could hear the smile in her voice. You know what? I think I'm going to talk to Richard about it tonight. Good for you. Charlotte? Yes? I'm sorry. For everything. And I'm sorry I stormed out of the hospital. I should have stayed and celebrated your beautiful baby with you. It's okay, Victoria. We're family. Family forgives. Can I come visit again? I promise I'll be on my best behavior. Of course you can. Alexander would love to meet his cousin properly. His cousin Thomas, Victoria said, and I could hear the determination in her voice. 3 months later, Victoria and Richard officially changed their son's name to Thomas Richard Ashworth Clark. Victoria called me the day the paperwork was finalized. It's done, she said, sounding happier than I had heard her in years. His name is officially Thomas. How does it feel? I asked. It feels perfect. It feels like him, you know? When I look at him, he's definitely a Thomas, not a Mortimer. I'm so happy for you, Victoria. Thank you. And Charlotte, I've been thinking about what you said, about me being competitive. I want to try to be different. I want to be the kind of person who celebrates other people's successes instead of trying to top them. That's wonderful, Victoria. But you know what? Maybe a little competition isn't always bad. Maybe it's just about finding the right kind of competition. What do you mean? Well, instead of competing over who has the most expensive nursery or the most unique name, maybe we could compete over who can be the best mother, or who can raise the happiest, most well-adjusted kids. Victoria laughed. Now that's a competition I can get behind. And she was true to her word. Over the following months, Victoria slowly but surely became a different person. She still lived in her mansion and drove her Range Rover, but she stopped making everything about money and status. When Thomas took his first steps, she called to share the joy, not to brag. When Alexander started sleeping through the night, she congratulated me instead of trying to one-up me with Thomas's accomplishments. The turning point came at our cousin's wedding 6 months later. Victoria and I were both there with our babies, and several relatives commented on how different Victoria seemed. She's not showing off as much, my Aunt Margaret observed. It's nice to see her just enjoying being a mother. As we were leaving the reception, Victoria pulled me aside. Charlotte, I wanted to thank you. Thank me? For what? For the Mortimer thing. I know it sounds crazy, but I think it was the best thing that ever happened to me. It made me realize how ridiculous I was being, and it forced me to take a hard look at myself. I'm glad something good came out of it. Something good? Charlotte, everything good came out of it. I have a son with a name I absolutely love. I have a better relationship with my family, and I think I'm becoming a better person. All because you were clever enough to outsmart me. Well, when you put it that way, I do put it that way. And I want you to know that I'm grateful, even if I was furious at the time. Looking back now, 2 years later, I can say that the whole Mortimer incident was one of the best things that ever happened to our family. Victoria and I are closer than we've ever been. Our sons are the best of friends, and Victoria has become someone I genuinely enjoy spending time with. She still lives in her mansion and drives her Range Rover, but now she uses them to host family gatherings and give rides to relatives who need them. She still has more money than she knows what to do with, but now she uses it to help family members in need and donate to causes she cares about. And sometimes when we're watching Alexander and Thomas play together, Victoria will look at me and say, "Thank God you didn't tell me you were naming him Mortimer Bartholomew," and we'll both burst into laughter. The moral of this story? Sometimes the best revenge is just being honest about who you are and what you want. And sometimes, a little bit of clever planning can lead to outcomes that are better than anything you could have hoped for. But most importantly, family is family. And even when we make mistakes or hurt each other, there's always room for forgiveness and growth. Victoria and I both learned something from this experience. She learned to be less competitive and more genuine, and I learned that sometimes the people who seem to have everything are the ones who need understanding the most. As for little Alexander and Thomas, they're growing up as the best of friends, completely oblivious to the drama that surrounded their names. And that's exactly how it should be. So there you have it. Sometimes the best revenge is just being honest and staying true to yourself. If this story taught you anything about family dynamics or made you think about your own relationships, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more real-life stories like this one. And don't forget to share this with someone who needs to hear it, whether they're dealing with family drama or just need a good laugh. Trust me, they'll thank you for it. What would you have done in my situation? Let me know in the comments below.